Hello, my name is Sridhar Rangan. I'm the Festival Director of KASHISH Mumbai International Queer Film Festival, which is having its 12th edition right now. Today, we are in conversation with the amazing filmmaker, Mike MOSALLAM, of the film Breaking Fast, and two amazing actors, Michael Cassidy and Amin Al Gamal. So thank you all for joining in this conversation. And we have Mohammed Sheikh Hussain Ali, but I know him as Ali. Ali is a film producer, published author, and a human rights activist associated with multiple LGBTQ organizations across the United States. He's South Asian, Indian, Muslim, gay, basking in his multifaceted personality based in the heart of Manhattan after spending more than a decade in San Francisco. So thank you, Ali, for agreeing to host this particular conversation. Really privileged
My
to have
pleasure.
you. Let's join the Q&A and begin the thing. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I will start off this way. It was a time of solitude last year. It was a piece of sadness, a slice of agony, and a moment of night. That's when I had this missing companion come to me, and it was Iftar, Breaking Fast. It had music, smiles, tears, love, passion, and most importantly, food. Lots of food. The movie had a mix of challenges with the right twist of fun.
Thank you for that beautiful intro, Ali. That was so incredible to listen to and so thoughtful and generous of you. Thank you so much.
Oh, trust me, last year's pandemic, this was one of the movies that kept me going. So thank you. Thank you for making it though. So your vision plays out pretty well on the screen, especially in the form of subtleties. One of which being not leaving the shoe soles facing the sky. Such personal touches definitely got my eye and grabbed my attention. But what were your thoughts while adding them in?
The other day, I got a text message from a friend where she sent me a photo of her shoe flipped over and said, thinking of you. So it's like, it's one of those weird things where, you know, these moments, you don't think they'll resonate because they're just so like personal and in your head. And then yet people are going like, I know that so well. And I think so much of the film, we approached it with a motto of specificity, creating a world of universality. Like the more we could lean into the very, very specific nuance of this character and this world's life, we knew that there would be more to take from in a universal way, regardless of where you fell on the sexuality spectrum or your faith spectrum or your identity spectrum. It was more about connecting on a human level, and we knew that specificity would accomplish that goal.
Thinking of you was throughout the year, whenever I saw it's like, oh, that movie, that was part of it. Moving on to Michael. The most elusive, non-existent knight in shining armor.
Until you meet Michael Cassidy in real life and you're like, oh yeah, that's why I wrote this role.
Oh, that's nice.
So there is one scene where you confront Mo about his happy-go-lucky attitude. And I think you called it bright siding. And that was an essential turning point in the story. How many retakes did it take? And what all really hampered that night?
I don't remember any scene taking a lot of takes. We didn't have time. We had to shoot this movie while we were able to function and on a small budget. And there was a lot of night shoots, including that night. We got a lot of stuff that night, but we got it really quickly because Anka, our camera person, had the camera on her shoulder and Mike had this really fleshed out scene and script. And so, you know, all those words just sort of do the work for you in my experience. And Mike is the kind of writer and director, but the writer connection for me as an actor is that if I really take those words in, especially by the time we got to that scene that you're referring to, I could just sort of ride the words and pay attention and be in love and let Haas sort of get under my skin or not, and trust that Mike was going to tell the story in the edit, you know. And essentially that's sort of like a really simple way of describing what my job is, and really how easy it was on this film in particular.
When we started that scene, we started on Mo's side. So we got this incredible performance from Michael, but we never saw him. We only saw it from Mo's perspective. And then when we turned the world around and we were getting Michael, like obviously the night is long, he's done it a bunch of times and the performance, whatever. So I remember stopping down and Michael and I went to the side and just had a very, very, I'll never forget it. Just a moment where we talked about some really, really hard things together. And like immediately he went right back into it. And that's the take that you'll see on camera. It was a very special moment for me as a director because I've never felt so connected to an actor in that specific moment.
Yep, that was really good. Especially the moment where Cal says, I like you a lot, and then describes the points, and then Mo doesn't have anything to respond to it. So, I mean, your character was sharing the other side of the whole beauty that Mo keeps talking about. And actually, that conversation adds a lot of realism to it. And it didn't end up just being a happy love story. So if it's not too intrusive to ask, are there any personal experiences that you would like to share?
Sure, yeah. Regarding the scene?
The conversation, anything.
Yeah, it was very emotional. First of all, we didn't have a lot of time to film the scene, and we were all aware that it was this sort of beast. And even though dinner scenes around a table can seem very, pedestrian and common, they're actually very logistically hard to shoot. So that was a bit intimidating. But in a way, not having a lot of time was helpful because I didn't overthink it. And I kind of just let the emotions and my experience just come out naturally. And I was surprised. I didn't intend to play it the way it was played. I wasn't like, I was sort of overcome by the experience because this is very much my story too. And I don't think I'm Sam and I don't think I'm Mo. I'm somewhere in between in terms of my relationship with Islam and my sexuality. But I wasn't aware of how important that scene was. As wonderful as Breaking Fast is putting out an ideal of what we wish, the world was like. I think it grounds it in a certain reality, and it also addresses Mo's privilege, and our privilege. And there's not a day in my life when I think about what would it be like if I was born in Egypt, My parents are from Egypt, so if they never came to this country, what would my life be like?
That's really nice. Yeah, and Sam actually brings out so well. Mike, who's the real Sam?
Sam... you know what? The reality is we're all Sam. Sam is definitely based on a person who, in my own life, has the ability to sort of check me when I'm getting a little too high for my horses. Is that the expression? High on the horse? Big for my britches. There it is. Yes. And and it's also this idea that there is this friendship between two people where you can be super personal, super invasive, say some really, really cutting things, and know that that there's such a specific kind of boundary that doesn't end things, that reparative apologies are necessary, but there's nothing that you can do that will sort of end the relationship. And I think, especially in Mo's life, he needs those kinds of deep reality checks, and there's no better person to do it, Sam. But it's, to answer your question, it's the character is based on one of my best friends.
On that note of resemblance, I couldn't avoid but check the similarity of Tata and your grandmother in the credits when I saw the picture. And especially that touch of those one-sided therapeutic routine calls that happen with that. And the touching moment was when the connection is finally cut, when the inbox is full. So how did the piece come back to life?
I will continue to honor that relationship. My grandmother, God rest her soul, was and continues to be the strongest force of unconditional love in my life, and she, you know, after 12 years of passing, still finds ways of proving her real guidance and existence to me, and I will continue to honor that legacy as much as I can. But I also think, you know, I think we as queer people all found that. We all found the grandma, the best friend, the, you know, the parent of the other friend, like some sort of chosen family, some sort of chosen world where our primary relationships were not able to give us the things that we needed, sometimes because they are not capable and other times because they didn't want to. And I think we all find our way towards the people that give us what we need. I came out very late in life, and I came out in a way that was as much of a surprise to me as it was to anyone else, because I didn't, I mean, I guess that's not true. I was a musical theater major, but even before I came out, my grandmother was always the grounding source. And I just want to continue to honor her. I want to continue to honor those kinds of relationships.
I want to pick that point that you mentioned when we are meeting the parents of the other friend. Michael, especially in that scene towards the end where the expression of the mother's face when she looks at you for the first time, that stuck in my head. And she's shocked by your Arabic and awed by your shoulders. How surprising was the script when you first read it?
I mean, I loved it, obviously. Mike described it so well. The specificity felt, there are a lot of things that I don't share with Mike and Mo, and that I don't have a lot of exposure to. And at the same time, I have sat around these dinner tables. I have met those mothers. I know these, you know, fathers who fall asleep on the couch. You know, I've never eaten the food, but I know this food. I understand this because of the way that it's written so specifically. And most importantly, for my purposes as an actor, there's just this unlimited resource of, from Cal's perspective, what's going on in Cal's life is that things have gone from bad to worse, and he's falling in love now. And that is like such a great gift. You know, when we get to fall in love, it is such a great gift. And he sets out to enjoy that gift. And that is exactly what intimacy in all of its sort of imperfect, unjust, wonderful ways feels like to me, is the way that Mike sort of told that story. And that was the way that I could sort of tap into it. And that was my way in. And so that was the most sort of meaningful thing to me when I read the script and I didn't know anybody that I now call my good friends.
Nice. I felt there was this connection between Cal's childhood trauma and the whole family dynamics and how it plays a role in choosing Mo as a partner. So how were those thoughts and plans coming through?
I don't think I've ever seen a story where the white character had the big flaw, the big apparent sort of flaw, and the brown character was like, my parents love me, I have a great job, I'm cool. You know, I don't think I've ever seen that story. And I think there was something really special about part of what makes Mo so interesting and so exciting to Cal is that there's an opportunity to fulfill a family desire that was not given to him in his primary circle. And I think, you know, I think too, ethnically speaking, I don't think you have to be Arab. I think you can be anything, to any ethnicity, to understand the role of family and the role of like what those primary relationships can do to both, you know, nurture and uplift you and also to mess you up, but whatever. Having a situation where the white character was in awe of the life of the brown character was really interesting to me.
Sam's presence and influence on Mo's life, especially his West Hollywood life, is an unbreakable bond. And I guess after watching the movie, I so wished I had Sam in my life.
Me too. Me too.
I mean, while you were playing this character and throughout your journey personally in Hollywood, as you get roles and work it out, how has your personal journey been? Do you have a Sam in your life, and how do you get to meet up with all of these directors and roles?
I think that's a really good question, because for me as a queer person and a person of color who's also Muslim, it was a very long journey for me to get through the barriers of just feeling like I'm okay and I can just be myself. And weirdly enough, I do have a Sam in my life. Insofar that I think I have lots of good friends who maybe have different components of Sam. I think, yeah, Sam does, like, he's fun, but he also does the real talk. He doesn't enable you, you know. So I have friends who play those different roles. But as a gay man, I accepted myself and who I was to an extent, but it wasn't until I had a gay friends who were all really different and different points of view. And I don't necessarily agree with all of them. Some of them are crazy, you know, some of them while out, some of them, you know, are more, you know. But dipping my toes in that made me a lot more comfortable going out in places like West Hollywood, because I felt I could get in touch with my sexuality in this way. And you can have like real talk about the weird things about being gay that no one ever tells you.
Wait, can I jump in for a second and say something to you, Amin? I don't know if I've ever told you this, but this is 100% true. You within the context of your gay friend circle has always been for me such a role model of how to have gay friends. And I actually, over the course of the years of knowing you, have really thought about how you have this like very profound and like incredibly nurturing group of gay male friends. And it's really encouraged me to find, you know, that for myself.
I was gonna say, I didn't know that, Mike. Thank you for sharing that. That means a lot to me.
It's true. No, it's very true.
I feel really lucky. And I think we don't talk a lot about, we might come out and then we might be like, oh, I hate West Hollywood, I hate that. And obviously it's fine if that's not your cup of tea, of course. There's definitely criticisms abound to be made of, you know, WeHo and the Castro and, you know, the kind of sexualized drinking cultures. That said, there is a bit sometimes of a last stand of like homophobia that needs to be broken. And sometimes you can only do that with other gay friends, and because it can be very hard to be vulnerable when you go out and someone is invulnerable and you're trying to be invulnerable and you clash, and really what everyone wants is just to really connect. But sometimes those learned behaviors that we learn to protect ourselves can inhibit the actual connection. And I feel like that was kind of my last, it's all a process, of course, of like learning how to accept and love yourself.
It's amazing to learn that. And I mean, you intrigued me. What are the possibilities that happen in WeHo?
I'm going off camera for this one.
Question.
I'm going off camera. So Ali, what I'd like to have happen is Amin to answer the question and then Michael to answer the question.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
How do I say this? Well, there's a sense of relief. There's a sense of fun, banter. You know, gays love banter. There's a sense of community that's very tangible. There's, you know, sex and body positivity. So some of it might be sort of affronting. And then other times, you know, you're like, hey, I look good. I made an outfit. I want to be seen. I'm here. I want to be my full self in a certain performative way. And that can be, if you're with a good group of friends and you feel safe and supported, that can be such a great release, and it can be very healing, for sure.
So Michael, what is your version of it? And let's add a little bit juice.
I mean, I don't know anything about, I don't know anything about going out after 9 p.m. I never have. I don't know anything about music. I don't know how to dance. There have been a few times.
I told you he's non-existent.
I think what his West Hollywood is like Teletubbies, Paw Patrol.
No,
like
that's not. Yeah, my West Hollywood is like, what are we making the children for dinner? That's my that's my nightlife. 4 to 6. Let's figure out the menu. Chicken nuggets, stuff like that. And then when we were making this movie, I would do that, and then I'd realize I hadn't slept during the day, which is what I needed to be doing. And then I would go to work instead of sleeping, and sort of fumble my way through it. And Mike saved it.
I think it's interesting because now we're having these conversations about, do gay clubs and gay spaces really matter anymore now that people are more comfortable with themselves and comfortable in different spaces? And it's interesting because I grew up on this weird cusp where I was like maybe 22 when marriage equality passed, or 20, or maybe a little bit older. But I had kind of become an adult in a different world, and then, was entering another world where, I could get married all of a sudden. And so I think, to me, gay culture is, as silly and as bizarre as it sometimes is extremely important and means a lot to me. But I also, it's kind of bittersweet to see, like, is that getting, outdated, which I think maybe is theoretically a good thing, but also makes me a little bit sad.
Also it's also a product of age too, right? Like, it's also, I think at a certain point that scene speaks to a certain age, and then after a while you elevate, you find your core group of friends, things migrate to smaller spaces, more intimate, vulnerable spaces. So I think, like, the characters in this film are a little older. They're not just coming out. They've had a bit of a life. So I think their approach to the scene, even from their age perspective, is a little different.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, even though they might have outgrown it or be over it or not really be into it, it still inevitably plays such an important role in terms of Mo getting out of his own way and becoming who he is. Even if they're not like, I like to drink and go out and be crazy and stupid and hook up, that's still where he gets the man in the karaoke scene. That's still where stuff catalyzes. So I really appreciated the nuance of how that setting was approached, because sometimes there's a lot of cynicism and a lot of criticism of those spaces. And I think Mike did a really beautiful way of weaving in a very nuanced approach of the neighborhood in this very magical way.
I also think the cynicism and critique of the neighborhood is really just a desire to be accepted by it, right? Like, we're mad at it because it doesn't love us the way we want to be loved in the way that we have human to human interactions. That's my opinion.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Asking about this Superman.
Oh, Superman fan? Yeah, huge. Do you have a favorite?
Superman? Oh, Christopher Reeve, no contest.
Agreed.
Which one was your favorite one? And whatever dialogue that Mo said, is that right?
There's no question. Christopher Reeve is the absolute only real Superman. Everyone else who's been fine has been an imposter. It's totally fine. They're great at what they do. I love looking at Henry Cavill, but Christopher Reeve is without question the only real Superman.
And was that by any chance inspiration to put Michael Cassidy in that role?
It's sort of the other way around, right? Like, when we were talking about actors and Michael Cassidy came to our casting director, Tina Becker, mentioned him only then to make me realize that I knew who he was. It was serendipitous because he had a history with both Smallville and Batman and Superman. It was like, this is a sign from God. This is a no-brainer. It must be. This has to be. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, Michael, but it's true that in the 2006 iteration, you donned the suit. Is that correct? Did I make that up?
I wore the cape in 2004 for a day. I screen tested and wore the red cape for that.
It was always meant to be. It was always meant to be. This is exactly how it should have been. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just like Superman, you don't exist.
Man, if this is what not existing feels like, it is weird, because I feel so real. I feel like I'm living a life. So that is crazy that I don't exist.
When you came up with this character of Cal and weaved it into it, barring the effect that Michael was the main inspiration behind it. But in reality, when you were like putting it all together, what was going on in your head? And I don't know if Amin and Michael would know this, but I would love to know who that real Cal is.
Shoot. In a year of press, no one has asked me that question.
Yeah.
So the reality is this: when I started to meet and interact with more gay men, and I started to figure out very early on sort of what I was drawn to, what my tastes were, both physically and personality wise, right? The only options at that point in my life were primarily white men, because there was not, in my experience, a huge amount of comfortability within POC queer men. This is, 20 years ago. This is a very different time we're living in right now. So when I thought about who Cal was, that's just sort of what immediately lended itself to the character. The other thing is that I knew that this film was gonna have a lot of questions around it, right? And I knew that specifically I could utilize a white character to create a level of comfortability with the audience to ask the questions that, this sort of almost be the conduit to the audience to ask the questions that needed to be asked. I'm hoping that we were able to sort of do that in a more nuanced way, and it wasn't so sort of direct and on the nose. But so that's a lot of that reason. I will also say that the first male that I ever dated, our first date was very similar to this happenstance kind of meeting. And it was a long time ago, and we met very randomly at a party that I did not want to go to. And we, he was interested, and there was no part of me that would believe that he would be interested in me. And so like that sort of concept came from that experience. And he was a tall, dashing white man.
So it's a kind of a dual question for both of you. So starting with Mike, when you were casting, how did you find Amin? And Amin, the other side of the question, how did you end up with this role? Especially, we all know how Hollywood is. And how did that match in heaven happen?
When we started casting this film, we worked with this incredible casting director, Tineke Becker. Mm-hmm. And what I did very early on was I handed her a list of 22 Arab countries that we would see that actors would need to be from for us to consider them for this role. And that really lent to the specificity of what we were trying to do. Amin and I have known each other for a good long time. I've been in LA for about 10 years. And early on in my tenure here in LA, I was introduced to a queer Muslim, I don't know, it's not a support group, Amin. Like, what is it? It was just like a friend meetup. And that's where I first met Amin, and we were friends. We became friendly. We had a lot of mutual friends. And as my world got smaller, he was just sort of closer and closer to the center of it. And when we wrote the script, I knew that he would be perfect. What I didn't know, because of how Hollywood is I didn't know if Amin was a funny actor. I knew he was funny. I didn't know if he was a funny actor because he had not afforded those kinds of roles. And so we asked him to come in, and I think he was the second or third actor that we saw, and the first Sam, and we stopped seeing Sams after that. He did the ketchup scene, he nailed it, and it really was a match made in heaven. Not only is Amin a fantastic actor, right? The level of humanity, the person that he is, that he brings to set, the way in which he's so thoughtful and careful and compassionate as a human being lends itself so much to the experience you have with him on set, but also what projects back to you from the camera.
Thank you, Mike. I'm learning how to take compliments. It's hard. I will say that working with another Arab Muslim American who's also queer in this case makes a huge world of a difference. And it speaks a lot to why we need more decision makers of different backgrounds. I'm part of an advocacy group that helped. We did all these educational panels for all these casting directors and lobbied the union to have a diversity category for MENA, which is Middle Eastern and North African. So now you actually see a little more specificity, but the specificity is really important because a number of times we've seen like Israelis playing Arab and speaking something that doesn't sound like Arabic. You know, you kind of are just like, what?
Or the confluence of dialects.
Yeah, or this is like, yes, which was a challenge for me because the Egyptian dialect is very different from Lebanese, for instance. So that for me was the most challenging thing, was just that small paragraph I had in Lebanese Arabic in the fight. I also have just been, as Mike said, until recently, Hollywood has really only valued me as my ethnicity and only in service of stories that seem to have some sort of Orientalist agenda, consciously or subconsciously, like, you know, terrorist things, you know, conflict in the Middle East. And because I'm sort of soft, I would always get these auditions early in my career that were like, the sensitive terrorist, the terrorist that doesn't want to be a terrorist. He might be a little slow, you know. Oh, he's just such a sweet boy. We must save him from the other angry, scary Arabs who are all played by South Asian people. You know, it's really just a nightmare. And on top of what that does for your self-esteem, it also is like politically, it feels disgusting to be part of this tool that is used to dehumanize your people, you know, for political reasons or whatever. So yeah, Mike, the thing I was best known for was kind of dark, menacing character. And that's kind of the footage my agents had. So I think when the casting director saw this, she was like, are you sure this is the person that you want to play this comedic character? So I felt super grateful to have the opportunity to be funny and to be seen in a different light, let alone to play a gay Arab.
You are the perfect Sam.
Perfect. It's absolutely true. Perfect, Sam.
So now that this amazing movie has gone out, and I personally know about all of the awards that you have gotten, one of them I voted. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Like, where is this journey going?
So I had a bunch of things come out that I've been fortunate to be a part of over the last year. I've got a small part in this Netflix movie, Army of the Dead, that came out last weekend. I'm at the very beginning of it.
I saw that.
Oh, right on. And I'm on this show, Resident Alien, that's on the Sci-Fi Network, and something else too. And so I'm looking
Mythic
for
Quest.
work, and I'm raising my family. Wait, what?
Mythic Quest.
And and I'm on this Apple TV show, Mythic Quest, for a very short period of time. So I've had a couple of things, mostly that were made before the pandemic, and I'm you know, vlogging those things, check them out, and I'm looking for work and raising my kids.
I just finished a stint on a show called Good Trouble on Freeform. And yeah, I have one film I was in that's also in post-production from before the pandemic. It's a queer drama that's in 3D. It might never see the light of day. And I'm also looking for work too. I'm auditioning.
Well, we are definitely loving the humbling success of Breaking Fast. We are now on Hulu, which is really exciting to say that thank you that we made this sweet little indie film and it found its way to a mainstream streamer. we just signed an agreement with an international sales rep. So this film will find its way in international territories soon enough, God willing.
All the best.
Thank you. And then the script that I wrote over the pandemic, it's the next feature script, was just selected for the Blacklist. They have a version called the Muslim List, their first ever. And so it's hoping that that script gets made sometime next year. It's a very, very different film from Breaking Fast. It's set in the 90s. It's about chubby kids. It's called the Untitled Chubby Muslim Project. It's more autobiographical than Breaking Fast ever was. That is the one that I will clearly say is based on some real reality of my life. And we are slowly in talks about developing this little nugget into another iteration of sorts, and we'll see sort of if anything comes from that. But you know, who knows?
At the end of all of this, I describe Breaking Fast as a poetic journey of breaking molds, breaking from the past, breaking from stubbornness, breaking out of concerns, and most importantly, I'd say breaking of chains.
And eventually breaking of butt virginities. I totally ruined your very poetic moment. Sorry.
God.
So sorry.
On that note, I wish, hope, and pray for many more such happy endings in your future.
Inshallah.
Amin.
Thank you, inshallah.
Thank you, Ali.
Ali, thank you
It's a
for
pleasure.
this. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for making it and making my entire pandemic good.
So nice.
That was a
such
lot, especially
great,
coming from
fun
a queer Muslim.
conversation. I was laughing behind. I mean, I was not visible, but I was laughing and enjoying the conversation so much. Such a candid conversation, brought out so many aspects about the film, but also about racial identities and sexual identities and West Hollywood. I mean, it was a whole mix of so many things. It was so exciting. Thank you, Ali, for doing this particular Q&A,
My pleasure.
hosting this. And thank you, Mike and Michael and Amin for joining this. So if you're watching this on our social media, please put your questions and I'll make sure that Mike and Michael and Amin will answer it on our YouTube and Facebook. So thank you all for joining this Q&A. There are 2 more weeks of Kashish Film Festival still going on. So please register at mumbaiqfs.com and you can buy 2 weekend passes. Passes are still available right now. So thank you so much for joining this conversation.